Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you on this Thursday early evening, August 12th, 2021. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska. Or if you prefer the old-fashioned way, a recorded phone forecast, 1-800-472-0391. Well, let's get into it. We're still looking at some locally heavy rainfall across portions of the northeast Gulf Coast into the northern half, especially of the Panhandle. Now, the flood watch has been upgraded to a flood advisory for Yakutat, Juneau, and the Skagway areas tonight into at least early Friday. The atmospheric river, that is that plume of subtropical moisture that's ridden out ahead of a low pressure system and frontal system, has placed moderate to heavy rainfall that's been focused on the Yakutat area. Over 5 inches of rain thus far with this event has fallen in Yakutat and will gradually shift southward and weaken as we head through Friday and into the early weekend. Another item of note, some light snow has fallen in the higher elevations of the Brooks Range, including passes like Adigan and Anatuvik, where they've got a light slushy dusting of snow. And another item to keep in mind for those of you in the west, Seward Peninsula, the south side, southern Seward Peninsula, including Nome, will see elevated surf levels here this weekend due to some stronger southwest winds ahead of a cold front. So we'll point that out as we get into that map. But right now, most significant weather going on is across the southeast there. Yakutat, Juneau, and Skagway are under flood advisories, which means there could be mainly some minor flooding of rivers and creeks that keeping an eye on, and a low risk of any type of landslides. But nevertheless, there have been some healthy rains. The forecast upward rainfall amounts in excess of 6 inches there are expected at Yakutat, and Juneau area has already picked up just over an inch of rainfall, with more, the heaviest rain arriving here tonight into early Friday. And as you go further south, the rain will taper off as this atmospheric river begins to slowly diminish over the course of Friday night and early Saturday. So there it is. There's that plume of moisture riding northeastward, pointed right at Yakutat. That's why they've had the heaviest rain. Plus, you have those coastal mountains that really just rise up there off the coast. So there's been some heavier rainfall up in those mountains. Some areas there probably have had 7 inches or so of rain. And then you can see that's going to shift. That area of enhanced brighter white clouds will begin to drift southward further into the northern and central areas of the Panhandle as we head through tonight and tomorrow. So the areas that'll see the least amount of rain in the Panhandle will be the southern end. Ketchikan has enjoyed some sunshine today with temperatures in the 70s. Yes, it's been just gorgeous there. Elsewhere in the state, though, we have cooler to some colder air in place, cloudy skies, light showers, and as I mentioned earlier, even some light snowfall reported in the higher elevations of the Brooks Range. And as we look further west, there is a weak area of high pressure out over the Aleutians, the lower Bering, and the central eastern Aleutians. But the main weather feature is that low pressure that is centered just to the east-southeast of the Seward, or I should say the Kenai coast. And we have that plume of moisture riding north-northeastward out ahead of the frontal portion of that. And that is what's causing the heavier rains that's moved on up into even the Yukon, some of that moisture. But again, most of it gets rained out there along the coastal mountains is where the heaviest rainfall falls. And then a trough lagging back through the northern half of the state, just south of the Brooks Range, hence keeping some of the light precipitation going there. As we go through tonight, we do anticipate that low over the northern Gulf just to slowly press eastward, with the heaviest rains then shifting a little more south across the northern half of the Panhandle. That will tend to influence the areas around Skagway and Juneau tonight into early Friday. We'll still have some lighter snow showers back there across the far western area toward the northwest coast, as well as the eastern Brooks Range, with areas of fog out over the lower Chukchi Sea and down toward Norton Sound and back to the west there at St. Lawrence. And the weak high pressure continues there just over the lower Bering Sea and the eastern Aleutians into the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. On Friday, we'll continue to see that low just kind of reshape a bit. Frontal system will tend to weaken, but still some pretty good moderate to locally heavy rains coming down across northern and central portions of the Panhandle. And back farther north, can't rule out an isolated rumble of thunder there along the Alcan border, the upper Yukon Valley. Otherwise, back toward the northwest, there will be a mix of some light rain and light snow showers there up through portions of the Brooks Range and just off the Arctic coast, with mainly some rain and fog out there in the lower Chukchi Sea. And you can see that cold front approaching from the west. Now that's the front that come Friday night into Saturday is going to help increase the winds ahead of it. So that southwest winds coming right up into Norton Sound there will cause some elevated surfs there along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula, including Nome. So keep that in mind for this weekend, Saturday into Sunday. And the low over the Gulf will just kind of gradually wash out the remnants of that kind of up there in the southeast portion of the mainland. And then as we look west, there is another low southwest of the central Aleutians, but that will bring some additional rain up into the central Aleutians as we head through the course of the weekend. Otherwise, it is starting to look a bit drier in south central areas, including the lower Alaska Peninsula, maybe even down in toward the Kenai or Kodiak Island. And looking at low temperatures, we're looking for lows mid and upper 50s across the southeast inner waterways, and then back through south central areas, generally upper 40s to lower 50s. High temperatures Friday afternoon still could make the mid 60s there, 65 at Ketchikan, but cooler under the steady rains, only upper 50s to near 60, central and northern panhandle. And then back toward the west, readings interior will generally be in the lower 60s for highs, though with 50s west of the Alaska Range toward McGrath. Saturday morning lows will generally be mid 50s there across the panhandle, upper 40s to around 50 degrees throughout much of the south central areas, including the Kenai down toward Kodiak. And then temperatures Saturday afternoon, at least there across the panhandle, will generally be around or just above 60 degrees, and maybe lower to mid 60s at best. Anchorage on up toward Talkeetna if we can get a few breaks. And then across the Arctic coast, lows will generally be low mid 30s, lower to mid 40s the Yukon Valley, upper 30s to around 40 of the Seward Peninsula. Highs, warmest readings, a few lower 60s there for Yukon, Fairbanks on over toward Northway. Other areas generally in the 40s. If you're in the higher elevations of the Brooks, generally some upper 30s and 40s, and generally 40s along coastal areas of the Northwest and the Arctic coast. And low temperatures Saturday morning, similarly in the upper 30s to around 40 degrees along the Arctic coast. Colder a bit in the higher elevations of the Brooks, and lower to mid 40s there in the upper Yukon Valley, as well as back toward the Seward Peninsula. High temperatures should get back up around or a bit above 60 in east central areas, and generally 40s to lower 50s along Arctic coast and back toward the Seward Peninsula. Across the southwest, we'll have lows Friday morning in the lower 40s across much of the interior, heading on up the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers, and upper 40s, mid-upper 40s going out the length of the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And then Friday afternoon, we're going to see readings a bit cooler right along the immediate coast, just upper 40s, but inland highs maybe low 50s and maybe getting upwards to about 57 or so, 58 around King Salmon, and then just generally mid 50s as you extend out through the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutian chain. Lows Saturday morning across the interior will generally be in the lower 40s, and mid 40s along the coast, mid upper 40s as you get out again running down the length of the Alaska Peninsula back toward into the Aleutians, ADAC there at 48. And then for Saturday afternoon, temperatures will be a little better, mid 50s, mid maybe upper 50s across the interior of the southwest, and a few upper 50s to maybe near 60 degrees extending down the beginning there of the Alaska Peninsula, with highs generally mid upper 50s dropping down toward the central Aleutians. Quick check of temperature outlook here. This is August 18th through the 22nd. We still expect temperatures to average below normal across much of the state, especially centered on the west central areas, including the Seward Peninsula. And then precipitation is expected to average a bit above normal there along the northern half of the state, centered on the central and western Brooks Range, with perhaps a chance to dry out in the southwest and south central areas after what will have been a rather dry couple of weeks. So that's the way things are shaping up here, heading up through mid-month.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
In your flight weather, if you're planning a flight here to begin the weekend, we are looking for two weather features of substance. Low pressure in the Gulf is the one that's brought the heavier rainfall along the northeast Gulf Coast into portions of especially the northern half of the Panhandle, including the Yakutat area. And then we have a cold front that will be approaching and moving into the northwest Arctic coast by Saturday afternoon. But in the meantime, we continue to see IFR conditions Friday morning, especially across the southeast Panhandle, on up through Yakutat and along the Alaska Range. And as we head into the day on Friday, we will be looking for a small chance of an isolated thunderstorm popping up along the Elkhorn border, east central areas, particularly maybe the upper Yukon Valley. Otherwise, IFR conditions still holding across a good chunk of the southeast Panhandle, and at least not as extensive there in the Bering or the Aleutians. And then Saturday morning could be a few pockets of IFR along the west arm of the Alaska Range, and still the inner channels there of the Panhandle, and then back out there in portions of the northwest, and especially out over the central Bering back to north of the central Aleutians. And Saturday afternoon, fair amount of VFR conditions along the mid-upper Yukon Valley, and areas that were IFR have kind of tend to reduce more to MVFR, including a good portion of the southeast. So past conditions on Friday, Anaktuvik will see MVFR conditions become VFR, as will Adigan. Look for VFR conditions developing by later morning and afternoon. Lake Clark will be MVFR becoming VFR by afternoon, and Merrill will start out IFR and then improving to MVFR conditions later in the morning and afternoon. As we round out through the Alaska Range, IFR conditions, Rainy Pass in the morning becoming MVFR. That'll also be the case at Windy Pass, IFR to MVFR. And then Isabel should generally hold on to MVFR conditions throughout the day on Friday. Mentasta will see MVFR conditions become VFR, and Tanita MVFR to VFR as we head into the later morning and afternoon. Portage should have IFR conditions, especially the east entrance and out over Prince William Sound there, early to start, but becoming MVFR as we head through the late morning, especially afternoon. And then, of course, Chilkoot and White will hang on to IFR conditions throughout the day on Friday due to the influence of that moist flow and periods of rain and lower ceilings that are associated with that low pressure there that will gradually weaken in the Gulf. Freezing levels have come down across the west to around 2,000 feet. In some cases near the surface there along the Brooks Range and Arctic coast. Otherwise, you can see freezing levels rise upwards to 12,000 feet or so across the southeast Panhandle. And generally, as we extend out across the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians, below 6,000 feet, somewhere around 6,000 feet, icing potential will be greatest between 12,000 feet and a flight level of 20,000 feet in the southeast Panhandle. And then portions of the southwest could see some considerable moderate icing between 12,000 and 17,000 feet. Check of jet stream level winds. We have a pretty good core of southwesterly winds aloft from northwest Canada out through the Panhandle that are upwards of 100 to 120 knots and 130 knot jet max there just south of the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. And as we drop down to mid-levels 9,000 feet, we see that strong push there, 50 to 70 knot winds up into areas of the southeast. And that's helping to transport that moisture from the subtropics, bringing the locally heavier rainfall. And as we come down to 3,000 feet, we do see southwesterly winds upwards to 45 knots there over the southern half of the Panhandle. That will lend towards some turbulence, as low pressure will gradually weaken over the weekend, especially more so as we get into Saturday and certainly by Sunday. And a little ahead of that front approaching from the northwest along the northwest coast there, some winds southwesterly upwards to 35 knots. And as you would expect, there in the northwest, there could be some pockets of turbulence between the surface and 4,000 feet as that front will be approaching and moving into the northwest coast by Saturday, early mid-afternoon. And then areas of the southeast, the Panhandle there, both outer and inner waters. We'll see potential for turbulence between the surface and 6,000 feet. So as always, if you are planning a flight, be sure to check the latest conditions and forecast. And we certainly want you to have a great time and a great weekend. Conditions should be gradually improving in many areas. So if you're heading out, have a safe flight.
What's up, my magnanimous star friends? Trace here for your weekly backyard astronomy update. Let's find the summer triangle so I have an excuse to talk star brightness, aka magnitude. Hit the sky around 10 p.m. and look east. Look for Vega in Lyra, Deneb in Cygnus, and Altair in Aquila. Together they form the summer triangle asterism. Really fun to find. But Vega is cool because all sky objects have a magnitude. Think of a timeline with Vega in the middle at 0. Mars, visible in the south, is a negative 1.8. But Polaris, the North Star, that's a positive 2. Jupiter, way brighter, stretching into negative numbers. I know it's a little bit confusing, but you'll get it. I believe in you. Most urban stargazers can't see anything dimmer than 3rd magnitude, but the dimmest the human eye can see is 6th. When you plan your stargazing adventures, look up the magnitude, and then you'll know how bright objects will be once night falls. Keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become tsunami ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level.
So, and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village.
Yeah.
What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest tsunami ready city is Seward,
Good.
you know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several tsunami ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those. And, you know, and they practice. They have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk?
Absolutely. The tsunami ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, many communities sound their sirens daily, some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when, it'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right, and that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay. Very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website. So, you know, just Tsunami Ready,
Google
and that'll
Tsunami
get you
Ready.
there.
Okay.
And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay. All right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis at this
No,
point.
they don't need to worry about it.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964. Okay.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one and we'll join you next time. I'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and it's time now for the marine weather segment. And with the sea ice edge, we continue to see the remaining ice there off of the Arctic coast. It's going to be pushing northward here as we head through Friday into Saturday. There will be a cold front approaching from the northwest, approaching the northwest coast. So south and then southwest winds will be picking up here, especially as we head into Saturday. Otherwise, the southeast, the main weather story has been the low pressure in the Gulf, frontal system, atmospheric river bringing in the heavier rainfall around Yakutat and the northern half of the Panhandle. As a result, ahead of this front, southeast to south winds 15 to 25 knots, but gust up to 35 knots there. The inner canals around Petersburg up toward Juneau. And along the coast, the outer coast, generally southwest winds around 25 knots, waves as high as 10, 11 feet there, a little less 6 and 8 feet west of Yakutat. And then on Saturday, winds will be coming down overall. In the inner canals, 10 to maybe as high as 20 knots, and Lynn Canal, and waves 2, 3 feet at most. And along the outer Gulf Coast there, winds will be out of the southwest to west at 10 knots, and waves generally running around 5 feet. Across south central areas, we'll see mainly a westerly component to the wind. Across the central and northern portion of Cook Inlet, 10 to 15 knots, as well as there in Prince William Sound, with waves only running a couple of feet. But winds will be around 20 to 25 knots, especially off the Kenai and just off of Kodiak, where waves could run as high as 8 feet. On Saturday, look for still mainly a westerly component to the winds. Strongest winds will be down there at the mouth of Cook Inlet on up to just northeast of Kodiak at 25 knots from the west, and waves around 8 feet. Prince William Sound running a couple of feet, and west winds 20 knots with 6-footers off the Kenai. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island will see southwest to west winds 20 to 25 knots, but they do taper off toward this tip of the Alaska Peninsula at 10 to 15 knots. Waves maybe up to 6 feet there, south of Sand Point, and a few feet there on the Bering side. And then for Saturday, generally west winds across the region, 15 to 20 knots. Waves 5 to 7 feet along the areas of the North Pacific and Gulf, and 3 to 4 feet there on the Bering. And then across the Aleutian chain for Friday, winds will be variable around 10 knots, the eastern half, with waves 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side and 5, 6 feet on the North Pacific side. A little stronger east wind setting up ahead of low pressure well southwest of Kiska. It'll cause easterly winds there and waves maybe to 8 feet. As we go into Saturday, winds will still be a bit variable, 10, 15 knots in the eastern end of the Aleutians, but turn more east, northeasterly, central and western Aleutians upwards to 25 knots there west of Adak. And waves will generally be 6 to 9 feet on the North Pacific side, and 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. Across the west coast on Friday, Winds generally 10 to 15 knots most areas, waves 3-4 feet in much of the open waters and only a couple feet in Norton Sound, but we will see winds begin to pick up on Saturday from the south-southwest, especially there north of Nunavik Island on up toward Norton Sound in response to a cold front approaching well from the northwest. But those winds will pick up and cause the water to begin to pile up a bit and have some higher surf there along the south coast there of the Seward Peninsula. And you can see those stronger winds in the lower Chukchi Sea on Friday, upwards to 30 knots from the south, creating 9 to 10 foot waves off of Cape Lisburne and Point Ley. South winds along the Arctic coast, 10 to 15 knots, so that's going to help pull that ice further out into the Arctic Ocean. And definitely Saturday, with that cold front approaching from the northwest, southwest winds area-wide 20 to 25 knots, as high as 30 knots there just north of the Bering Strait, and highest waves running 7 to 10 feet in the lower Chukchi Sea, otherwise 4 to 6 feet across the Arctic coast. And a quick check, there's low pressure there, the surface map there across northern Gulf. We have a stream of moisture coming in with some heavier rainfall across the northern half of the Panhandle tonight into Friday, and that system will lift further north and weaken for Friday during the day. Then by the time we head into Saturday, overall that low will weaken over the southeast interior, and just with lighter rains becoming more showery across the Panhandle as the cold front pushes onshore into the northwest portions of the state. So that does it for the show tonight. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.